Now, let me state the obvious here. Modi and Macron have great chemistry. We've seen it many times. Whether it's enjoying fireworks in Paris, or a roadshow in Jaipur, or a bilateral at the G20, the comfort and warmth is evident. And that's because of two reasons. One, their personalities are clearly in sync, though they're 27 years apart. And two, because the bilateral relations are so good. There are no disagreements between India and France, no internal meddling, no sermons, and no strategic rivalry. Why is that? Because both India and France share a similar vision, that of a multipolar world. They don't want to dominate or dictate others. Listen to this.
आज विश्व बदल चुका है. आज मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड है. आज दुनिया का हर देश इंटरडिपेंडेंट है, इंटरकनेक्टेड है और उसमें हर एक की अपनी आवश्यकताएं भी कारण है और टेक्नोलॉजी भी रोल कर रही है.
Nous sommes irrémédiablement liés.
The world has become multipolar again. This means that we have to relearn the complexity of the dialogue, but also its fertility.
That vision is very important, especially in today's world. We've seen camp politics intensify recently. You have the likes of America and Britain on one side, Russia and China on the other. The battle lines are very clear. So is the objective: to dominate global affairs, to shape the world in their image. And we've seen this before. The Cold War in the last century was about the same thing. The US on one side, the Soviet Union on the other. You were either with them or against them. But some countries refused to play that game, like India. They remained non-aligned throughout the Cold War. France was not part of that gang. They were very much in America's camp. Yet Paris was not a blind follower. I'll give you some examples. In the 1960s, they sold weapons to India, including aircraft like the Mirage. In 1982, they shipped nuclear fuel to India. The US was supposed to be the original supplier, but when they pulled out, France stepped in. And this continued even after the Cold War. In 1998, India carried out a nuclear test. Most Western nations sanctioned India, but France did not. What does that tell you? France is more reliable than other Western countries. They have an independent streak. Consider the US war in Iraq. Britain jumped at the chance of helping America. Again, France did not. They opposed the US invasion. Which brings us to present day. Both India and France are middle powers. That's the term used for countries that are not seen as superpowers, but they still have a lot of influence over regional and global affairs. Those are middle powers. Let's look at some numbers. France has 290 nuclear warheads. It is the fourth largest nuclear power in the world. India has 164 warheads. It is ranked 7th. Let's also look at the economy. France's GDP is around $2.7 trillion. It's the 7th largest economy. India's GDP is 3.3 trillion. It's the 5th largest economy in the world. Now, the point of this analysis is quite simple. Together, India and France have a lot of clout. France can bring in the European Union. India can influence the global south. It's a win-win partnership. Also, a necessary partnership. There are two wars ravaging the world right now. Russia versus Ukraine and Israel versus Hamas. Both have deepened political divisions. In Ukraine, the West is backing the Kiev regime. They will not let Ukraine surrender or lose. Same in Israel. The US won't pressure Israel for a ceasefire. On the other side, you have China and Russia. Beijing is silently backing Putin's war. Reports say Russia is using Chinese gear in Ukraine. So who is talking about peace? Who is aiming for the middle ground? Countries like France and India. Let's look at how they have navigated these two wars. We start with France. In February 2022, President Macron flew to Moscow. He met President Putin of Russia. He tried to dissuade him from invading Ukraine. Unfortunately, it did not work. When Putin invaded, Macron helped Ukraine. He has given them military aid worth $3.5 billion. At the same time, he's open to talks. Macron says he will speak to Putin if there is hope for peace. His policy in Israel has been similar. Macron flew down after the Hamas attack. He expressed solidarity with the Israelis. But now he's urging restraint. He says fighting terrorism does not mean flattening Gaza. And he is right. Now we come to India. When Russia invaded Ukraine, New Delhi did not condemn it. Instead, it called for dialogue. Prime Minister Modi told President Putin, this is not the era for war. At the same time, India sent aid to Ukraine. Not military aid, humanitarian aid. The 15th consignment reached this week to Ukraine. And in Israel, India's policy mirrors the French one. First, full solidarity, then a ceasefire call. Now, both these approaches are rooted in realism. The idea is not to take sides or make a bad situation worse. The idea is to find solutions, which is why the India-France partnership is so important. It may not be a new non-aligned movement, but it's certainly an alternative to camp politics.